Hi all.
Hey there, Garrett. And now I'm going to push it over to Facebook. I'll let you know when that's up and running.
I'm getting the notices that it was successfully transitioned over to Facebook for live streaming.
I think so. I'm just waiting for it to actually go live. I'm watching it right now. And yeah, we've gone live on Facebook. So I think we are ready to roll. Mita, if you want to kick it off.
Well, welcome everybody to 2021 Reverse Pitch. We're gathered here today from many parts of Alaska. So Dleka Klenach Mita Duet, Yuhat Duasak, Klinga Klenach Zetzinak Yuhat Duasak. My name is Mita Duet. I'm calling in from Dena'ina Territories of Anchorage, Alaska. Traditional Eklutna peoples were on this land, and all of Alaska is traditional lands of indigenous peoples. So I encourage everybody, when you introduce yourself, to acknowledge the original peoples from where you're coming from. Alaska has 266 of the over 567 registered tribes. So we have almost half of the tribes registered to the federal BIA in America. So we're a very diverse group of people. So I'd like it if you could think about the tribal name, or it's a challenge to you to learn about the tribe who lives and still currently lives on the land where you reside. So welcome everybody. Here's just a reminder, if you didn't see the notice when you logged in, we are recording this session. The session is streaming live to Facebook. It will be on the AKV3 page, and it will be there so that you can actually access it later as well. And we're going to go ahead and look at the agenda. If we could have Margot, please. Thank you. Awesome. So we have several pitches today. We have some intros and some welcomes that will happen here shortly when I'm done. But we'll be looking at Launch Alaska with Isaac. And we are going to go through these pitches, and each pitch has a very specific amount of time available to it. We're going to stay within a 12-minute cycle. However, as we know, if we get talking and there's lots of questions, we will have space at the end of the event for people to go into breakout rooms, and those will be talked about more later. We also have pitch 2 with Alaska Ocean Cluster with Taylor. Pitch 3 is food systems, which of course is, if you know me, is one of my favorites with Jody Anderson. Pitch 4 is hydrogen energy with Nathan. Pitch 5, rural growing plant with Eva. And we also have pitch 6, health tie with Jacqueline Summers. And we're going into a what's next after this at 6:25. And like I said, we'll have that wrap up, but it won't be the end if you want to continue speaking to our presenters today. All right, so we're going to transition over to Margot. Are you ready?
I am ready. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to do a Menti poll. I'm going to go ahead and launch this. For those of you who are not familiar, Menti is a really cool tool. If you're on a tablet, on a computer, have your phone nearby, go ahead and pull that out. You go to www.menti.com and you use the code 3307. 4425. And so just really quickly, we wanted to see who's here with us today and where are you joining us from. So your name, you could tell us the organization or the community that you are joining us from today. So again, you go to menti.com and you use the code that's at the top of the screen there. And we're going to get a nice little word cloud going here to quickly look at who is joining us today. And those of you on Facebook, of course, please join us. Go to menti.com and enter your information as well. We're going to do this for just a minute or two, and then we're going to go ahead and switch back over so Kai can tell us a little bit more about the reverse pitch event and why we're all here today. And if you're just joining us, we're just doing a quick Menti poll. We wanted to see who was joining us today and where you are joining us from. That could be your community in Alaska. That could be the organization that you are with, whatever you would like to share. So we're just going to spend another minute here. You are allowed to enter multiple things. I know that there's a little bit of a character limit. That's just because in a word cloud, as many of you have probably seen, if it's a sentence, it'll start to cut the words off. So you can enter in a number of different times. So we're just going to spend another 30 seconds here while we have a few more people joining us. Just go to menti.com, enter that code that's at the top. That's 3307-4425, and tell us where you're from and who's joining us today.
I have a question, Margot. Is this updating in real time?
This is updating. So there's a little bit of a lag, but it's about 35 to 45 seconds behind. So it says right now that we've got 22 people who've entered in some type of response. And so it has a little bit of a lag, but it should be catching up, and we'll be able to see them also at the end. We'll share those out with everybody.
Wonderful. And the link is in the chat along with the code. If you just want to cut and paste the code, it will help you to access this survey with menti.com. And it's saying, who are you and where are you joining us from?
And thank you, Robert Shields in Fairbanks, for sharing that. I totally understand with some bandwidth issues. Thank you for joining us today. We're happy to have you here.
Excellent. We have about 36 people on, and that's actually a pretty good group, especially the transition after the work hours. I know that we'll have a few more people attending as we go forward.
All right, Kai, we are ready for you to take over and share your screen, or I could share the presentation, whichever you would like.
I am all set here, so. So thank you all for joining us. I want to take just a second and talk a little bit about what Alaska version 3 is and a little bit about this event that we're doing. Alaska version 3 started in November of last year as essentially a question about what's next, Alaska. It was a question that came out of an interest in looking at our economic and our community future. And it's built out of an acknowledgement of the prior economic model that has worked in Alaska for generations in our subsistence. That was then largely built on that was the extraction industry. And now we have an opportunity to begin building a new value-added sustainable future for the future. And our work has been going on now since last November. We meet weekly. We have a Facebook and LinkedIn group to try and involve people. And we have a website where we're trying to collect and curate information. The idea behind this reverse challenge pitch came about as we've looked at the opportunities that are coming out of the challenges that we face in our state, and the notion that these challenges begin to be actually the place that we might start in terms of building some of our future opportunities and to create the economy of our future. The reverse pitch idea comes about from, rather than the traditional experience you have in pitch events where somebody's pitching a solution, we're working to try and pitch and elevate Alaskans' knowledge and involvement in the challenges that are important to us. And this is a part of an open innovation type of strategy where, rather than the traditional model where innovative types of activities happen off on the side and somewhat separate from the economy, as you see on the right-hand side, open innovation invites us to take those innovation entrepreneurial opportunities and bring them into the heart of our existing businesses, our emerging businesses, our public and private sectors, to try and harness the creativity of the entire community. It's really about creating innovation that has an impact on our future by looking at challenges as a way to create opportunities and innovations and potentially new ventures. It's a way to think about how our future economy is built out of solving some of the challenges we have and then sharing them with the world. The idea of them being investable is about the idea that many of these challenges are ones that we're already investing in. We're spending money on healthcare challenges. We're spending money on rural energy and logistics. We're spending money on energy. Why not spend some of that money in creating the solutions we know our world needs? Ultimately, we're hoping to connect people and organizations with these challenges and inspire Alaskans. So I look forward to hearing more about the pitches. And I will turn it back over to, I'm sorry, I should know.
It's good, Kai. We're looking forward to today and everybody's participation. And we're going to introduce Melanie next. Melanie runs the 49th State Angel Fund, which makes early stage investments in Alaskan companies and hosts programs like the Alaska Angel Conference and Startup Week. She also leads the commercial clean energy financing for the municipality of Anchorage. Prior to living in Alaska, Melanie worked for Google for 7 years and holds an MBA in sustainable finance. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you, Mita, and thrilled to be here today and be able to moderate these pitches that you're about to hear. Normally, I hear pitches and moderate pitches of various companies, and they're great ideas, but in this case, we will hear great challenges. So a quick reminder of the format this evening as it loads up on the screen. There we go. Thank you, Kai. It is, oh, Kai, if you don't mind going back to Google Slides. We can see you multitasking. The format will be 6-minute pitches, starting off with what is the challenge, then with why it matters, why it's investable, and perhaps by whom, finishing off with where and how you can engage, you, the audience, can engage with these various organizations. And following that, we will have a 5-minute Q&A that I will moderate. You're welcome to raise your Zoom hand and participate, ask questions live of our presenters, or post in chat. And we encourage you to participate and actually engage and ask these questions live. So Kai and Tracy will be helping moderating and calling up folks as questions come up so that we can keep this live and engaging. As Mita mentioned, at the end of all of this, after all the presentations, you will each get an opportunity to meet with the presenters, ask any questions that you might have, or even hear more about what they're currently working on to help solve that challenge. So with that, I'd like to introduce Isaac and our first pitch and challenge that is presenting from Launch Alaska. So Isaac, if you'd kindly share your screen if you have slides, and we will start your 6-minute clock.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Melanie. It's a sign of Alaska's smallness that Melanie and I have been playing phone tag, and we finally get to connect over Zoom. So, but yeah, thanks for the invite, Kai, and thank you for the beautiful land acknowledgement, Mita. I am presenting today from the historic, current, and future lands of the Dena'ina people in Anchorage, Alaska. So let's see, 6 minutes. I hope you don't judge me too harshly here. I'm going to do my best to stick within the format of that Kai gave us here. Let me try to share my screen.
As long as you make it as challenging as possible for this crowd to help solve it.
All right, and I'll hit presenter view here. Okay, so just a quick overview of Launch Alaska to provide you some context. We are a mighty team of, I think, 8 folks. You probably recognize some of this. I am the CEO at Launch Alaska, and our organization's mission is to accelerate the resource revolution by deploying game-changing technologies. That means we're laser focused on the deploying part of that. If you think about research, development, and deployment, we're the last D. So we think that America has an absolute gem of an innovation infrastructure between the national labs and the universities, but there's a lot of technology and incredible companies that have technology that's ready to get out in the field and get deployed, but just needs a little helping hand. And within that mission, the technologies we care the most about are food, water, transportation, and energy. So basically any technology that helps decarbonize and electrify any of these four systems, we are keen to connect with and to support. And as an organization, we have a goal of facilitating $1 billion of projects in Alaska by 2030, which seems crazy when we set this goal a couple of years back, but now just a couple of years in, it seems well within reach, and there's a ton of momentum in this space that we're operating in. So what is a deployment accelerator? It's basically, think of it as like a 4-session Shark Tank, where we have a bunch of companies that apply to our program from anywhere in the world. And we facilitate connections with Alaskan asset owners. I think we have 50 some panelists this year, and 19 companies that are just starting the 2021 program. They generate a bunch of leads. Then those companies start winnowing down those leads to the point where at the end of those 4 sessions, we have some smaller number of companies that have actually signed contracts or kicked off steel in the ground projects with Alaska asset owners. So it's just kind of big matchmaking Shark Tank type of program. And you'll recognize some of the companies in our portfolio from one of the locals, Heather's Choice. In the food space, we have several in water now as well, including an Alaska company there with Aquaga. And Tier is also an Alaska company. We have quite a few companies now in transport, from rural logistics to unmanned aerial systems or uncrewed aerial systems, and software for fuel saving technology. And our largest vertical to date has been energy, although in our most recent addition to the cohort, we have quite a few in water. So water is going to be up here now with energy. But these are everything from small modular nuclear reactors to microgrid control systems to mobile microgrid, solar plus storage plus integration technology. So kind of runs the gamut, and all these companies are in our portfolio. And then in our current program, we have these 19 companies. Again, several from Alaska, but most of them from the lower 48, or this year, quite a few internationally, which is an interesting challenge to ask folks to get up at 2 in the morning to call into our sessions, but we're working through logistics of that. Okay. So the context that Launch Alaska is operating in, I promise I'm getting to my challenge here. This all feels necessary to describe the challenge. The context we're operating within is one of climate change being a real-time emergency for Alaska, where the fisheries are changing in dramatic ways. The soil underneath our energy infrastructure is literally melting beneath our feet. And we're seeing people being dislocated or relocated and starting to have their lives disrupted. So climate change is a major problem. Also, Alaska has, perennially in the top 5 where in terms of consumption of energy and price of energy. If you look at some of our communities, they're the highest energy cost in the country by a long shot. We also have, as you all know, real severe economic headwinds with, even before COVID time, the volume through the pipeline going down and the price going down of our main export. And now with COVID, hits to tourism, and it's just some real, deep soul searching as a state into what our economic future will be. And we also
1
have
minute,
Alaska
Isaac.
how many? Sorry?
One
Okay.
minute.
And we also have untapped potential to lead the resource revolution. But we have an incredible opportunity in front of us to be a world-class deployment ground for technologies. And there are all kinds of macro vectors that are working in our favor if we can seize the opportunity. The challenge is that we have a bunch of companies that want to do work in Alaska that see the opportunity, see the high cost, see Alaska as a world-class deployment ground, but there is no real policy structure to support startups in the state. And so we need a concerted effort at the policy level to educate our policymakers in the state about the opportunity that we see in front of us. We think that we have a real solution, not the only solution, but a real solution to solving some of our biggest problems and creating another 4 decades of spectacular economic growth to follow the 5 decades that we've just been through. And we need a policy kind of revolution in the state to support the rest of the work that we're doing. We'll leave it
Thank
there.
you, Isaac. Perfect. All right, folks. What are the questions that you have for Isaac as it relates to the challenge?
This is Kai, Melanie. I'll throw in one here. I'm watching the chats here also. If anybody wants to throw in a question. Eric is asking here, are there any lobbyists you have been working with on this sort of issue?
So if someone would want to pitch us on a new 501c6 for the state, we would be supportive of that. We have not been working with any lobbyists to date. Certainly the work that Chris Rose is doing over at REAP, which is not a lobbyist organization, they're a 501c3, but they do wonderful policy advocacy work, and the work that Commonwealth North does to advocate to our legislature as well as Institute of the North. There's some good policy organizations, but there's no one in the state that is specifically saying, how do we connect startups to policymakers in the state? Policymakers are all ears. They want to hear from startups. They want to understand what policy tweaks they can make. And certainly our portfolio companies have incredibly strong views about what changes need to be made, but we need some kind of an engine to connect our portfolio companies to the people who want to hear from them. And we have not been working with the lobbyist. Sorry, long answer to your question.
Great. All right, Gretchen, if you would like it to ask your question live. Let me see your hands up.
Hi, Melanie. This is Ryan with the Alaska Seeds of Change team. I'm sitting in the room with a couple other people here. I've got Gretchen, Drake, and Brett with me. And Isaac, we are wondering, if we get all of these startups in Alaska aligned, working in a direction, what's the goalpost that you want to see for policy? What if there was like a policy outcome we could be working towards? What do you think that should be?
I don't know. I don't know. And I say that because that is the challenge, is that there are so many requests. The companies come here, they get really excited because of all of the indicators they look for are there, but then they all have different views on what the right policies are, but they've I think the thing that they're unanimous about is that we do not have kind of a policy structure that is startup friendly. So if you go to Desiree, DSIRE.org, they list the state incentive and rebate programs for renewables, and Alaska is near the bottom of the list. If we just started with Desiree and got our incentives and rebates to even the middle of the pack, let alone our much smaller red state neighbor of Texas, we would be doing really well. But we just don't have a lot of things. So your question is that is the point. I can't sit here with my list of policies that the startup community wants, but we need some engine that's listening to the startups and then connecting them to legislators and policymakers.
Thank you. And I'm seeing a lot of questions pop up for you, Isaac. So I hope everyone will be joining your breakout room at the end. One last question from Robert live, if you'd kindly unmute yourself.
Hi. Okay. So my question for Launch Alaska is, have you guys been looking at the opportunities to partner with Canada and the Hyperloops and the ET3s and the advanced transportation systems that would basically move us from being the end of the line to a global hub of culture and commerce?
It sounds like we need to talk, not those projects in particular. But there is we have a lot of relationships with our counterparts in Canada that are doing kind of tech startup, VC type investing, climate tech support. And there is I think a really strong argument to be made that we should be a lot closer to Canada in this kind of Cascadia tech scene. But no, it sounds like we should talk. It sounds like you have some ideas, Robert. I'd love to hear more from you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all. All right, next up, Isaac, if you kindly stop sharing your screen, we can tee up our next two presenters representing from the Alaska Ocean Cluster. We have Taylor and Garrett. Over to you guys.
I'm muted. I apologize. I should be used to this by now. My name is Taylor Holzhauser. I'm joined today by Garrett Everidge. We're co-managing directors of the Alaska Ocean Cluster. For those of you not familiar with us, we are a startup accelerator / platform that got started back in October. We're working with a few companies. Happy to share more about our organization, but really we want to take the next 6 minutes and get into what we came here to tell you about today. So I'm going to turn it over to Garrett, and he'll start talking and I'll control the screen.
Great, thank you, Taylor. Okay, let's jump into it. So the problem that we want to highlight for this group is a pretty specific challenge, and that is the offloading of crab in Alaska. So the way we offload crab today is basically unchanged. It has been unchanged since the 50s and 60s. It is a process that results in about 1 to 3% of crab dying every year. In a typical year, we can harvest between 50 to 100 million pounds of crab in Alaska. So 1 to 3% actually adds up. Those crab die from a variety of reasons, including being crushed. You can see the folks in this photo actually standing on the crab. This is the traditional process that we use in Alaska. People get into a hold and they manually put the crab in these brailers. That's the carton you can see. We've got a video on the next slide. Also, these crabs are exposed to cold air. So this photo was actually taken in Dutch Harbor in January. And this is a time when it can be 20 degrees out. Crab do not like 20 degrees. They freeze and they die. The existing process is very manually intensive. It's dangerous. See the photo. And it takes a long time. So when a large crab vessel pulls into port, it can take between 10 and 20 hours to offload a vessel where the fishermen are sitting idly by. Next slide. So here's a little video that we're going to show. It's been sped up. This is the actual unloading process. So you can see these bags are being lowered down into the fish hold. It's typically called the fish hold, even though it's filled with crab. You can see the individuals actually sitting on the crab manually. They will soon manually start loading the crab in here. There's probably 100,000 pounds of crab in this hold. You can see along the upper part of the deck, these are actually dead crab. Perhaps they were crushed. Those are valuable crab. Right now, fishermen are receiving about $15 a pound. Taylor, you can just pause it right here. So you can kind of get a sense of the process. This is the process that unfolds over 10 to 20 hours. Very manual, very intensive, pretty dangerous, and nobody has come up with a better solution. Next slide. So we have a few constraints to any challenge. First, it needs to be relatively simple. On vessels in the Bering Sea and the Aleutian Islands, relatively modest amounts of sophisticated tools are carried. You know, if they might have a welder on board, but it has to be a relatively simple solution. It needs to be consistent with a variety of boat designs. The photo in this on this slide is a house aft vessel that differs from a house forward vessel. In the summer across Alaska, many of the vessels that fish crab in the winter double as salmon tenders, meaning they actually meet with salmon fishermen. The salmon fishermen place their catch in the larger vessel, and the crab vessel takes it to the processing plant. So any solution needs to maintain that functionality. Now, it's not all crab vessels that need this solution, as some of them actually process their own crab on board. The market for this, so I already mentioned that we harvest about 50 to 100 million pounds of crab every year in Alaska. After processing, those crab are worth about $300 million. There are currently about 90 large crab vessels in the fleet, every one of which uses the same process that was seen in this video. There's about 10 processing plants across Alaska. But of course, Alaska isn't the only place to harvest crab. There would be a market for a solution in Canada, Russia, Japan, and elsewhere. I'm thinking back to the format we were supposed to follow. Who we would contact for an investable opportunity. So, you could always reach out to us and we could connect you with crab vessels, crab vessel owners. There are industry groups that would be interested in a solution. There would be a variety of processing plants interested in a better way to do this. The next generation of crab vessels will likely include a solution. We're at the cusp of rebuilding our fleet. Many of the vessels in our crab fleet are quite old. Some of them are actually repurposed World War II vessels. So the timing is excellent for somebody to come up with a solution. Taylor, close us out.
Yeah, I think you hit what I was going to hit on. Feel free to reach out to us directly. We can connect you with some of the crab fishermen who've reached out to us and have raised this. There are a couple of fleet organizations that Garrett mentioned as well, who would be very happy, I think, to hear from folks. If you're an engineering student or someone who thinks you've got a really clever solution to this, we'd love to hear from you. Even if you're just interested in learning more about similar opportunities like this, give us a ring. All right, that's it for us. Question time.
Thank you so much. 6 minutes, pretty much on the dot. My gosh, and I'll have to admit, this was not a challenge I had ever thought about. With that, Eric Williams has a question if you would like to ask it live.
Sure. Thank you, Taylor and Garrett. Seems like it could be a problem with containerization. When you're processing things individually, it's not really efficient. A lot of what the fishing industry does is put things into these big totes that can be filled with ice or water or slush to keep the fish nice and ready to go. So it seems like maybe you could do a similar thing here, and those same containers could be lifted out of the holes on the grains.
Eric, I think you nailed it. We've actually seen we've seen a naval architecture drawings for a new Russian crab vessel that include a system like you've described. So basically containers, they would be smaller than the typical hold that you've seen in that video, but they would be able to be individually raised from the vessel. And so that's one idea that we've seen out there. So you're on the right path.
And I see in the comment section, there's a question about using a suction dredge. Garrett, I know you know about this. Do you want to take that real quick?
So it's a great question, because this is actually how I mentioned salmon. In the summer, when these holds are full of salmon, shoreside processors actually use large vacuum pumps to suck salmon out. So yeah, you're on the right path.
We also have a question.
Margot.
Okay, go ahead.
No, sorry. Whoever just started speaking, I apologize. I couldn't see. Please go ahead. I can follow up if I need to.
No, I was just trying to catch the first chat question, which was from Becky.
Oh, I see that. So what's been tried and not successful? We're happy if someone's interested in this. There has been some work that's been done. We are happy to connect with some of the crabbers who've explored some various solutions. So follow up with us afterwards. It's a little bit complicated and technical, but Garrett, do you want to
to our understanding, like, nothing else has been tried. It's a process that works. It's reliable. One nice thing about it is it's easy. Like, sure, it's cumbersome, it's inefficient, but everybody kind of knows how to do it. Capital has already been allocated to have the crane at the dock. if something goes wrong, like there aren't too many pieces that can break in this system. And in these environments, reliability, there's a premium placed on reliability. So there is often this trade-off between trying novel techniques, maybe involving more technology, but then there is often a hesitation that some of that technology isn't reliable. But to directly answer your question, I'm not aware of any type of innovation or even attempt. Maybe Jared had a comment here. Maybe he knows more than me.
In the interest of time, I suggest that this gets moved to the breakout room later. And Margot, if you kindly ask the last question. Sorry, Linda. I'll have to wait for the breakout room.
Actually, Garrett kind of already answered it. So I was wondering what would move all these fishermen from what they're doing right now, which seems reliable, to potentially new innovation. And so kind of I was thinking what would be the motivators? But you kind of spoke to that already. It could be far more additional income, things like that. So I was just curious about that, but great presentation. Thank you.
Let me just add one comment on that. It takes one dedicated crab harvester that's willing to try something else.
Powerful last words. And with that, we'll turn it over to Jody, who is director at UAF of the Matanuska Experiment Farm and Extension Center regarding food systems and resilience. Jody, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I am presenting to you this evening from Denina land, and I'm thankful to be located in Palmer, Alaska. So today I am presenting to you levels of challenges, and so bear with me as we move through this within the 6 minutes. If those of you who know me know I could do this all day, so I'm really excited for this opportunity. To set the stage a little bit, I'd like to just share with you that the Alaska food system is multi-leveled, diverse, and very complex. It includes much more than just the component that I'll be speaking of this evening as a challenge. But I do want to acknowledge that there is a very complex component of all of our lives, and it's how we eat. And regardless of where our food comes from and how we get our food, we all have to eat. So we're all part of this system, whether we want to be or not. And Alaska is at the tail end of the global food transportation chain. And so there has been a lot of work since Westerners came to Alaska to figure out our food system. Our indigenous friends who have been here through time immemorial have figured it out, but we're not in the same place we used to be. And so what we're looking at is a situation where I'm going to be focusing mainly on food production and agriculture. And these are statistics that have been made sexy by the Alaska Farmland Trust. They are from the USDA farm census, which is every 5-year census. As you can see, Alaska is actually leading the United States in many categories of agriculture. It doesn't seem like it. I mean, we have very small ag relative to everything else, but in reality, we're actually really leading the nation. And I'm very proud to say 47% of our farmers in Alaska are women. And that's a really exciting component. But most of our farms are very, very small. And that makes our farms more flexible and even more resilient. But our problem, and the problem that I'd like to pose to all of you tonight, is actually beyond this. I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but in order for you to buy local meat in a grocery store, It has to be USDA certified. It has to have been cut and packaged in a USDA certified meat processing plant. As of 2020, the state of Alaska had 3. One is located in North Pole, one is located in Delta Junction, and one in Palmer, Alaska. As of today, we have 2. The largest plant closed in Palmer. We now no longer have a certified meat processing plant anywhere in the vicinity of a large percentage of many of our animals. And so the problem then becomes a break in the huge cycle, right? If we've got cattle, we've got livestock production all over the state. And unless we can get it taken to a certified, USDA certified butcher, slaughter facility, then we're not able to sell it. And I don't just mean in grocery stores, but I also mean value added sales. Like, for example, this is an ad from 49th State Brewery. They purchased local yak. This yak has to be USDA certified. It cannot just come out of the field. And so it has to go through a USDA certified slaughter facility. The yak are located south of Talkeetna. That means that now they're going to have to transport it all the way up to North Pole. The stress that's added to the lives of these animals as they're transported hundreds and hundreds of miles from home. We have cattle on the Kenai Peninsula, certainly in the Matsu Valley, and now our only opportunities are to drive them either up the Richardson or up the Parks Highway for certified USDA certification. Obviously, this is a huge problem that we have that has just arisen in our food system. It is really hitting the resilience of our local food system hard. And because of that, what we're looking for as an industry is we are looking for innovators to come up with, instead of one big plant in Palmer, where it was, we're looking for several smaller possibly mobile plants that can be USDA certified. And that USDA certification is quite complicated and long, but once it's done, it can be used throughout. So we are looking for innovators to come up with ideas to help us make this industry thrive. It's an industry that was on the rise. We're getting more and more cattle, more and more livestock locally produced. And unfortunately, if you don't have the slaughter facilities to bring these to legally to market, you're not going to get farmers to increase their herd sizes, which means that they're not going to be making more money on that. So we have a hit in the system. So if anybody is interested in more information, if you want to chat, if you have ideas or solutions, please feel free to contact me. My email address is here. I'm located in Palmer at the experiment station and would love to have you come visit as well. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Jody. And I think this is just the right crowd of innovators as the questions are already coming in. So I encourage those that have questions to raise their hand to ask the questions live. Otherwise, we have a couple of questions in the chat asking about why the plant closed in Palmer to start off with. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Absolutely. The owner of the plant was not receiving enough meat to run a facility that was oversized for the production levels that we have right now. So he was spending more money on overhead and infrastructure than he was making. Simple economics. It was too big for what we have going right now.
Goodness. And there are a lot of other questions about economics, and I encourage folks to ask these questions live too to keep this engaging, especially knowing that we'll have a breakout session on this afterwards. We have a question about from Isaac asking about information on seasonal energy loads for a slaughterhouse. So tying the two
Yeah,
presentations together.
That's fascinating. I don't have any data that would connect to that whatsoever. And it would be wonderful to have that. But unfortunately, I don't believe that data is available except for just the simple overhead costs of the heating and water and all of that sort of thing that the Palmer plant had.
There are also talks about a mobile slaughter setup. Has that been considered?
Absolutely. And the thing is that trying to get it USDA certified is very, very difficult because you have to have gray water capturing system. And for most of the slaughter facilities, most of the mobile slaughter facilities, you can't just go and plug into a city water system and just leave the gray water behind. You have to have basically your own portable treatment system. And so then that raises even more challenge. So I'm really excited about the giant brains that are in this group and what ideas people may have.
Yes, indeed. My gosh, I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the chats and roping them into questions. So if anyone wants to raise their hand, we're taking volunteers for live questions. Linda has a question about the demand for increased capacity in slaughtering, and then we'll see, Robert, what your question is live.
Sure, the demand is there. The interesting thing is that farmers can't ramp up livestock overnight. It's a very slow process to build a herd and then to increase their herds to hit supply or to hit the demand. So it's a very slow supply chain gain. And because of that, that's one of the reasons the Palmer plant closed, is because there just wasn't, they hadn't captured that the farmers hadn't increased their herds to the size to capture the demand by the public.
Thank you. Robert, I see your hand has been lowered. If you still have it, you're welcome to unmute and ask it live. Otherwise, we'll go to Gretchen and Ryan and all the other folks.
So yeah, Jody, first of all, thank you very much for taking on this really important task. You know, we import 95% of our food, and we already see shortages and, you know, everything going on. Growing our own food, food sovereignty is the best food security we can achieve. So thank you so much for working on this. My question is, the cottage laws that have been used around the state to be able to get some of the producers to be able to basically fortify their kitchens, to be able to do some of this work. Has there been any work done around how that might be used to specifically address livestock and other kinds of work?
Yeah, actually, Robert, it is, you are able to purchase like a half a beef or a side, a quarter of a hog from a farmer. But what you can't do is that you cannot take that half or that side or that chunk of meat unless it's been butchered and slaughtered in a USDA certified facility. You cannot then sell it anywhere. Like if you have a food truck or a restaurant, you can't sell it in a store. You can't do anything with that meat except personal consumption. So what happens is that the market line, for example, locally here, Three Bears purchases a lot of local animals, and they run it through the slaughter plant here in Palmer, used to, and then they would have them and sell them as Alaska grown meats in their stores. And that's, you can't do that unless you've come through a USDA certified. So your cottage, all of your cottage stuff doesn't count at all for meat.
So as a state law, we can't tweak that. We can't include language that works to help with that, huh?
To my knowledge, I don't believe that that's even a possibility.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jody, for the very engaging challenge that has garnered quite the chatter. Next up, we have Nathan presenting on hydrogen energy, and he is the founder of Mighty Pipeline. Nathan, over to you.
Do I need to share my screen or? Oh, you got it.
If you have something to present, it's on you.
Yeah. Can you all see that or no?
Not yet.
Negative.
Okay, let me try one more time. How about now?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk. My company, Mighty Pipeline, is just centered the Launch Alaska Tech Development Track. And so this idea has come from a program funded by the Advanced Manufacturing Office called the Arctic Innovator Program. And it involves an ongoing collaboration between Pacific Northwest National Lab and the University of Fairbanks. So one issue is that hydrogen is an infrastructure and storage problem, and it took over 100 years just to build and finance our current energy systems. And we obviously don't have time to build up a whole network of infrastructure, and we're trying to find ways to connect Alaska's resources to foreign markets. So hydrogen and ammonia are both carbon-free energy. They're renewable fuels that can be produced with electricity, air, and water. So hydrogen can be interconverted into ammonia. And there's a lot of interest growing in ammonia because it's much more easily transported, as it would be a clean alternative to propane, whereas hydrogen's more like a clean alternative to liquefied natural gas. And interestingly, ammonia contains even more hydrogen per volume than does liquid hydrogen. And you can have direct fuel at $1.60 gallon equivalent. A challenge with renewable ammonia, though, is that is a transportation problem. So producing the ammonia in Australia with wind energy and transporting it to Japan, they find that the carbon emissions are comparable with those of Japan today, but these emissions can be reduced if we use pipelines or carbon-free sea transportation. So how might this look for Alaska? Well, we have an abundance of natural gas on the North Slope. We're developing a technology that will allow ammonia to be transported through the pipeline, and smaller ammonia projects using renewable energy could benefit from this and the same processing facilities to really lower the cost for the renewable products. And this will enable exporting clean energy, improving legacy operations, and resiliency for the petroleum producers. And there's various mutually beneficial value propositions, including the shared distribution and infrastructure, and is minimally disruptive. So our technology essentially involves forming new fuels and mixtures of ammonia and oil for use in pipelines and engines. So what is ammonia good for in Alaska? Power generation, either at a coal-fired power plant, or now Mitsubishi's developing turbines that are 40 megawatts. As a maritime fuel, there's global development and maritime engines, a eco-friendly refrigerant, and the fish processing industry. Nitrogen fertilizers, which we talked a lot about food security today, as a pollution control agent to get rid of carbon, SOx, and NOx, and ammonia cracking to be used in fuel cell vehicles, or to support sustainable carbon-free metal production in Alaska. And so just to think about where will we deploy these, we can either do, there's technologies for small volume using intermittent renewable energy, and also hydropower is very attractive for large volume and export projects. By 2040s, these will be competitive with diesel fuels. But today already this renewable ammonia would be cost competitive in fertilizer and refrigeration markets. And in general, one thing I'm thinking about is how can Alaska, being a producer of hydrogen and ammonia, reach these next generation markets and shipping? And also why there's opportunities both for battery vehicles and fuel cells at the same time. So with that, I'd be happy to hear any thoughts or questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nathan. All right, folks, let's hear your questions for Nathan. Either raise your hand or ask in the chat. Sounds like Linda has been reading articles on ships using ammonia as fuel as an option, which would be quite exciting.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the maritime analysts are really favoring ammonia right now, but of course, there's also certain organizations like Shell is thinks, you know, is betting big on liquefied hydrogen. So the upgrades are that sort of there's a few. So the pipe itself wouldn't have to be altered, and the technology we're developing sort of avoids some corrosion issues. One thing that would be a potential issue is various material compatibility issues. So instrumentation that's made of brass, or the gaskets and seals, if they're not ammonia compatible, that would be a significant sort of retrofit. But most of the cost would be in processing facilities. So the vast sort of bulk of the pipeline would be good to use as is.
And we have a question from Eric, who I know knows a fair amount on this topic, about the cost of upgrades required to make current TAPS infrastructure capable of transporting ammonia.
Yeah, it sounds like Nathan had just answered that.
That's
one.
the one I tried to answer, yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, keeping track of the chats and the time for folks. Mita asked if you might have met David Harrison of the Chickaloon tribe.
I have not. David Harrison. And where is he at?
He's in the Matsu Valley, and after this presentation, I'll look for connection email to share with you. He's been advocating for a hydrogen fuel cell plant in the valley for quite a while.
Yeah, and so I've always really wanted, I'd like to try to introduce, if anyone has ideas like that. So Joe Beach, he used to be a China volunteer firefighter. Now he's based in Colorado, and he has a sort of, you know, a ammonia plant that's great for remote power applications. And he recently got funding from Mitsubishi, Chevron, and Osaka Gas Company. So I always thought it would be cool to try to get him get some of those project opportunities on his radar.
Melanie,
very cool.
You have a question from Gretchen and Ryan. They have their
Yep.
hand.
Okay, so
Gretchen and Ryan, do you want to unmute and ask it? I think that's what Kai was suggesting.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I can ask now. I was just curious. First of all, thank you so much for presenting on this, Nathan. I really like this topic a lot. And I haven't really heard us like in Alaska talk about e-fuels. So this is really exciting. I wanted to ask, how far out do you think we are from like using this like ammonium hydrogen as fertilizer? And like, yeah, how can we implement that?
Can we test it?
So there's actually a lot. So in terms of the blue hydrogen and ammonia, there's actually a lot of projects being funded now. Like Japan recently is announced they're going to build a $1.4 billion blue ammonia plant in Canada. And for the green ammonia, I mean, really it would be about 2040s where it's truly cost competitive on a big scale. But today, so I spoke with Airgas Specialty Projects, their sales manager, and they mentioned that they get sort of orders for ammonia all the time, whether in fish processing or wherever. And it's just so expensive now that with the facility on the Kenai Peninsula shut down to get ammonia out here. So Airgas believes that green renewable ammonia would be cost competitive today in Alaska for fertilizer and any sort of application like that, but not for fuels.
All right, and for our last question coming from Garrett, are there any key policy changes that are needed? And the rest of the questions and comments should be directed to the breakout room at the end.
Yeah, so we're going to need to get FERC approval on the pipeline change. So it is, you know, there's substantial and significant regulatory barriers, and there's also no Department of Transportation guidelines for transporting oil and ammonia mixtures. So those are, things we're going to have to address.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nathan. Appreciate it. All right. And for our next presenter on the topic of rural growing systems, we have Eva Burke, who is a UAF student, as well as leads Rock Crossing Consulting. Eva, over to you.
Eva, you're muted. You're muted.
I tried to hit unmute, and then when I hit share screen, it like popped up. So I apologize. I had my presentation ready. Now I have to pull it up again. So 1 second. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so does that look better now? Can we see it? Apologize for that.
We can see it. It's not in present. Oh, we can see the speaker screen now. And it's a little pixelated on my end, at least.
How's that?
Still pixelated on my end, but let's run through it.
Okay. So I'm presenting on the biomass greenhouse project. I am still considering in Nenana whether to go with biomass greenhouse or to consider a season extender, possibly phasing from season extender and then moving into a biomass greenhouse. As I always say this, we can design and build anything for application in rural Alaska, but it's really training the people to operate and maintain these systems that's going to make or break our investment and our time in this. So I have a short video I prepared for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So some of it's a little outdated, and I will cover that in the after the slide, or after the presentation, sorry.
About 95% of food in Alaska is imported via air, leaving us one emergency away from being food insecure, as we recently experienced with a major earthquake in 2018 and most recently with COVID-19. Local food systems are becoming increasingly dependent on store-bought foods due to lack of locally grown options and significant impacts to subsistence harvests. As a harvester, I feel these impacts firsthand and am looking towards agriculture adaptations as a tool. Agriculture exists today in Alaska as an underdeveloped industry, especially in the indigenous communities. A few communities are looking towards using new agricultural and renewable energy technology, biomass heated greenhouses. Our boreal forests are being severely impacted by climate change, including drought, high temperatures, and spruce beetle kill. Clearing out spruce beetle kill to be used as biomass is a proactive solution to aid forest and fire management in Alaska, especially in rural villages. This solution is really about addressing food insecurity, adapting to climate change, and developing sustainable communities through collective action. I am developing a collaborative business model to utilize Native corporation lands, tribal resources, and local schools to engage in profitable, sustainable agricultural operations. My solution provides a team structure and community capacity framework for tribes to pursue agriculture and build collaborative partnerships. My framework focuses on leveraging community and regional assets specific to Alaskan villages. I'm indigenous to Alaska and well connected to many of our rural communities. I have a professional background in engineering with experience in business development, project management, and feasibility studies. My local and technical expertise provides a strong foundation for engaging these communities. Please join me on this journey to realizing food security in Alaska.
Okay.
About 90.
Okay, there we go. So when I was going through this project in the beginning, I thought about using biomass and how would that work in rural Alaska, and thinking about the spruce beetle kill as I was traveling around Alaska. Even this summer, I can see that the swath of the spruce beetle kill is growing quite a bit. And so I was thinking that it would be useful for us to consider how to harvest some of that and use it for biomass pellets. There's a lot of issues around the staging of spruce beetle kill, as we don't want to contaminate or infest healthy forest systems. And so it would take some investment in storage and staging the wood until it can be transported for use, or thinking about putting up these greenhouses and systems more local to where the spruce beetle kill is. But then after you harvest it, what do you do after that? So I feel like there's still a lot more studies around the sustainable wood supplies for biomass systems. And I think there are some benefits to them, as such as they're viable here in rural Alaska. We have a couple of them operating. They do provide workforce development opportunities, as somebody has to go out and harvest the wood. So not only are we providing workforce for growing the crops within the greenhouse, but there's actually a workforce component to hiring people to supply the wood to keep the thing operating all year. And then of course I have questions around sustainable wood supplies and the cost benefit. And that's why I started looking at season extenders, because that is another form of agriculture that we're using in rural Alaska, and it has lower investment costs. You can design and build a high tunnel with reused local supplies, and it doesn't require this, long-term sustainable biomass supply. So one thing that's happened in Nenana is there's been a forest fire. I'm from Nenana. The first project I want to build is in Nenana. And the one thing's happened is forest fires, which has now kind of decimated a little bit of our wood supply. And then also in Tanana, where they have a biomass boiler, there was questions as to whether or not that the harvesting the biomass for the boiler would affect the locals' ability to harvest firewood. So these are some of the challenges we need to look at. And I think that the season extender provides a nice way of extending the growing season, because when you invest in a project like this, you also want to extend how many months you can grow and supply food to the community. And you want to make it, you want to make your money back. We don't want to go into this project and have it not be sustainable because we don't have enough money to operate and maintain. So thinking about how to operate something year round is a big issue. And so again, I'm looking into the cost benefit. And in the high tunnels that are operating in Alaska, they're doing some things that you can roll down the visqueen on the sides so that that the snow and ice does not damage it, because some people's high tunnels are getting damaged after just a few years, or even after a season. So that's something else to look at. And
thank you, Eva.
good?
We are at time for the presentation and for the pitch of the challenge itself. Thank you for the video and starting to go down the path of solutions. There is a suggestion about harvesting hemp as a sustainable solution to this by Robert. And there was also a thought about, can you use, oh, that disappeared. Can you use it as lumber to build fire-resistant sustainable homes, and the waste could be pelletized? And Robert, you're welcome to unmute and share more live if you'd like.
Sure, I appreciate the time and the opportunity to provide the input that I can. So yeah, hemp is something that we should have been using a long time ago. It's such a versatile biomass, and it goes directly to what happens after you've cut down all the beetle kill. If you want to have a sustainable, financially viable operation, then you have to have a sustainable supply of material. And hemp is basically, it's either hemp or bamboo. And I think hemp is far more versatile as far as its ability to also be cultivated for oils, which can be used for cooking oil in a generator. It can be turned into fuel. I can go on all day. But the point is to expand upon that is that that is a very viable solution. And I know that there was some experiments done a while back at the Matnuska farm in regards to hemp. And I know there's been some recent, the recent laws that have passed. So now would be a good opportunity, because you can start planning now and harvest next fall. Order seeds, get an experiment going this winter. Now is a great time to be planting that crop, and then by next fall you'll have a very huge sustainable crop of all kinds of stuff. So again, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Yes, we have land near Nenana too that we could grow a hemp crop in. So that is something we do have. At the time, we have quite a bit of land to work with. And then was there another question? Sorry, I just got back from a meeting, so I was a little off my game tonight. I apologize.
I think we have a live hand raising. If you want to go ahead, Elijah.
Yeah. Hi, thanks. Yeah, I put it in the chat, but this book, Earthships, Volume 1, is a phenomenal book about storing solar energy and how to design homes and gardens to harvest that energy and extend seasons. It's a really wonderful buy for anybody who's interested in kind of sustainable development and extending seasons. It's a beautiful book. I'm interested. I'd love to talk to you further about it. I'm also interested in designing a greenhouse solution up here in Wasilla as well that extends seasons. So I'd love to talk with you.
That would be amazing. Yes, I wanted to say at the end, I got a little rushed for time there, but I would like to talk to people more in the breakout rooms. I think there's a lot of options and ability for partnerships in the work that we're doing. I think Nenana is a really great place and ideally suited because we're just an hour drive from Fairbanks and we have those partnerships at the university. I am a graduate researcher in 2 different departments. And I think, there's a lot of people within our university community who are interested in seeing this project become successful. So I think really finding that model that works, getting one of these things operating, but like I said, it's really training the people. And so I've been really focused on training the people and needing a little more advice on like the actual designs that are out there as far as high tunnel and biomass, like the greenhouse structure itself.
I think that's a great call to action for this group. Mita, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just gonna call out Ryan Witten. I'm surprised I hadn't heard his voice on that last topic yet.
I will say that we are kind of close. In fact, we have kind of reached the end of the Q&A time, so you will need to decide, Melanie, whether you wish to bring in Ryan's voice.
Let's save it for the breakout room because I have a feeling that Ryan and team will have a very lengthy conversation to this effect with Eva. Thank you so much, Eva. Eva, much appreciated. All right, next up, we have Jacqueline Summers, who's the Managing Director of Health Tie, which stands for Test Bed for Innovation Enterprises. Jacqueline, over to you.
Right. Well, thank you very much for having me here this evening. Tonight, I'm presenting from Anchorage, so I'm also on Dena'ina land and want to thank them for their stewardship of this, both in the past, the present, and the future. It has been truly exciting to be here tonight. I love all the ideas and the energy that's here. I'm going to share my screen right now, so give me just a minute. And let's see, there it is. All right. And let's see. Oops. Can you see that now?
We sure can.
Awesome. So I'm Jacqueline Summers and I'm the Managing Director of Health Tie. Kai asked me for one challenge, so I have of course brought 3. So I'm going to quickly try to get through that. Of course, I'm having trouble, but let me just escape for a minute. All right, well, I'm just going to keep going and you guys are going to have to trust me. Let's see what I can do.
Sorry, Jacqueline, do you want me to share it from my end?
Yeah, could you do that? And I'll just keep going.
Yeah, just
Thank
go ahead and roll in.
you.
I'll bring it up in a second.
Okay, so basically, HealthTie is a healthcare innovation hub. And what I do is I match late stage healthcare startups with Alaskan healthcare organizations that will work with them. And what I've been able to do is really find a niche that works with healthcare outside the hospital walls. And what we found is that many of the healthcare organizations that support people with Alzheimer's or with disabilities or substance abuse issues often need assistance. They're always stretched thin and they're over-resourced. So Kai, if you want to move to the next slide, please, thanks. So I've been able to do 5 different pilot projects, and many of the challenges that I'm going to present to you here tonight to you are from those collaborative partners. Let's go to the next one. All right, so for the reverse pitch, what I'd like to do is talk to you about process barriers. So you might think healthcare, technology, maybe something a surgeon would use in a hospital, but really what I'd like to talk to you about is how difficult sometimes just providing healthcare solutions outside the hospital walls is. And so why does healthcare lag behind? Well, what I always like to say, it's still the only industry that I know of that's still heavily reliant on the fax machine. So it's heavily regulated. There's lots of bureaucracy. It's really hard to change things. The other problem is that sometimes the alignment is really for who benefits and who saves money is really different from many traditional organizations. So the 3 challenges that I have for you tonight, the first one is actually from a partner in Palmer. And one of the problems is that when somebody is on probation, they have to provide a urine sample to their probation officer. And if they live off in the, like really far away from Palmer, they can't get to the site in time. And if they don't, then they might go back to jail and there will be a warrant for their arrest. And so what tends to happen is that incurs cost to the system, and it isn't healthy for anybody that's trying to actually change and make a difference in their life. So that's number 1, is we need to try to change how that process works. The second one is that the background check system in Alaska is absolutely broken. Literally right now, if somebody is trying to get a background check, it is being done by hand. If anybody needs to get a background check to provide services to somebody with disabilities or something like that, it's 3 to 6 weeks of a wait. Those are low-level, entry-level positions. And usually by the time that background check comes in, they've moved on. They've gotten a job somewhere else. So we need to try to figure out a way for for this to change. And then there's the third one. Thanks, Kai. So the last one is a successful partnership that I've created between a app that a UAA professor has developed called Step Away that helps people with alcohol moderation or abstinence that's really effective. It's now being offered through Recover Alaska for free, but we don't have enough people using it. So, and we all know that because of COVID and other issues, people are drinking more and more. And so that ability to successfully moderate their alcohol intake would be really, really valuable. And so just if anybody had any ideas about how to just get the word out about that. And then we're on to the last slide, please. And then if anybody would like to talk more about these, I can connect you to those collaborative partners at any time. So thank you, and that's it.
Perfect timing, Jacqueline, right at the 6-minute mark as my dog starts playing with his toys. So let's see. Oh, Cole has a question. Cole, if you'll unmute and ask your question live.
Hello there, Jacqueline. It is great to see you again. I'm Cole over at Seeds of Change, and really appreciate the chance to collaborate with you in the past. in regards to the background check item, that is something that like we're currently wrestling with. We're trying to hire folks at an entry level position, and it's taking so long for something that really should be pretty streamlined. So I'm curious if you know if there are other better models. Is it just Alaska that's running behind? Is this something commonplace in the States?
Alaska seems to be particularly behind in this issue. I think in other states, they do it more quickly, and they even have things that use like artificial intelligence. I think that this would take a big change at the statewide level. I do know it's the #1 issue. I spoke with Eric Boyer from the Alaska Mental Health Trust. It is the top of their agenda tomorrow for the Alaska Behavioral Health Association meeting. It is absolutely preventing anybody in this space from moving forward. And so it's just a critical issue. I think we need to overhaul the whole system. That's my own personal opinion, but I think it's so broken that it's an opportunity. I think we can completely change it and update it, but it would probably take, working with key legislators to make it happen. But happy to try to connect you to anybody I know who is in this space, and or anybody who would like to solve it.
Margot, if you'll unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you knew the third one, these were all super fascinating, by the way, and I had a giggle because I thought, I don't even know where to find a fax machine if I thought really hard right now. Do you know if that app has been connected with, and I apologize, I'm not going to use the correct term, but essentially UAA has like fraternities and sororities. I think they're called like Greek life or something. I don't know if they're connected, but I do know that they might be an interesting place to start. I'm not sure how connected he is with UAA students, but that might be a really interesting place that I'd be happy to help connect him with if I could.
That'd be awesome. I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, the fact is right now, any of us could go to the website on Recover Alaska and get help now, and you could download it. You just get a code. I think the main issue is stigma around this. And so I think we need to raise the profile of the fact that this is an app that actually works. It's got real research behind it. There's so many things to go through this with you, Margot. Many times I've been told that primary care physicians are not actually screening for alcohol misuse because they don't know where to send people. And so the fact that we could ask them to start screening, because if they identified a problem, they could just say, hey, why don't you try Step Away? And here's a free way to do that and just give it a try. I think there's lots of opportunities. I've been trying to promote it as much as I can. And I know that Recover Alaska is also doing that. But I mean, it's just an opportunity here to talk to a new audience and tell you, hey, get the word out. It's here and can be used. So, and I will say my partner, Polybeth Odom with Daybreak, who talked about the problem with the UA, has her own solution. I didn't want to present it because I knew that we weren't supposed to do that, but she's thinking of a mobile UA van, something that would drive around Palmer or Wasilla in order to try to meet people where they were. So I think but again, trying to figure out who would pay for that and how that would work, I think is still part of the challenge. So, and I apologize to everybody for my snafu with the slides.
No apologies needed. It has been happening all evening, so you're in good company. All right, one last question for Jacqueline. If anyone will be a brave soul to ask it live. And there's definitely some sympathy for those fax machines and how antiquated they are, but they do exist in medical facilities.
Well, right. And so that's the main thing is I think with all our innovators is this is an industry that really is ripe. Other industries have really moved ahead and they're doing, really streamlined, and this whole industry really could use some assistance in that way.
Most definitely. Well, thank you so very much, Jacqueline, for this terrific presentation and the 3 challenges, going above and beyond and challenging us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mita.
Well, thank you, Melanie. I feel like we just got started. I wanted to say thank you to all of our presenters. You did a wonderful job at clearly communicating your ideas and the challenges, as well as staying within the timeline. So I wanted everybody to practice. I know we've been on Zoom for 1.5 years now, but I don't see this very often. So I'd like to see everybody practice their thank you in sign language and like start normalizing sign. I think that in the Zoom world and all of us being on mute, sometimes we can have a little empathy with the inability to communicate. And so let's work on that. I'd also like to say Taiku, Koyana, Wedanku, Awa Ada, and Dogadin, Masi, Basi, Chinan, Hawa. Thank you, and Ganesh Chish. We have a survey that's going to come up. We'll ask everybody to participate in. Margot, could you pull up that slide, please? Wonderful. So we're going to put this survey into the chat as well. And do you want to talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So oftentimes we had a lot of fantastic stuff going on in the chat. It was actually a little hard to follow at times. So we want to make it easy. If you want to connect with us, if you have questions, something, one of these really piqued your interest and you have an idea that you want to continue working on, we're going to send out a form as to how we can continue to connect with you. In addition to that feedback form, we have a Slack channel that's been created, as well as the AKV3 Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Those are great ways to connect with many of the people who are here today, who are working on these challenges, or others who are just really excited by the possibilities here. And as was mentioned a couple of times earlier, we are going to open breakout rooms later. So if you want to continue to connect, that's a great time to do that. You can ask more questions, maybe chat a little bit more in depth. There are a number of other great ways to continue to connect with the community across the state of Alaska. So Alaska Startup Digest is a great way to keep up to date on events that are coming up and things that are happening in the community, and dive right in. I love the framing on that. There's a lot of Facebook groups, great ways to connect with people. And 1 Million Cups actually happened this morning. It is every Wednesday at 9 a.m. We have entrepreneurs and ecosystem builders from across the state of Alaska who come and pitch either their business or maybe a challenge that they're working on and look for ways to connect with the community. So many different ways to stay engaged. Starting off with that survey we're going to share in the chat. We would love to hear how you might want to be engaged moving forward. And which kind of leads me to, Kai mentioned this in the beginning of the presentation, but there are reverse pitches and challenges and a lot of work in the innovation ecosystem happening all over the place. We're going to send out a follow-up email with a lot of this information. It can be a lot to kind of digest all at once. But Center Ice up in Fairbanks actually has a list, or a great running list of community challenges that you can check out. Have a lot of great information there. The Alaska Energy Prize is something that investors are currently launching. I believe Kai might have more information about that. And then 2 national examples of essentially great culmination of challenges are challenge.gov and then innovative.com. And those are both great places where people across the United States are putting up challenges just like this, saying, I would love thoughts on this. What can we do? How can we look at this as an opportunity for change and for growth moving forward? And so finally, next steps. There's a number of different events that are coming up for those of you who might say, this was really cool. I would love to continue engaging with this group if you haven't before. One of the next things that's coming up pretty quickly here is G-Beta, a program that is based out of Anchorage for companies. Their applications are closing pretty soon here. After that, Startup Weekend and Startup Week are coming up in the first 2 weeks of November. That is a fantastic way for people to engage with the startup community. If you have never been to one of those before, you can Google Alaska Startup Week or Anchorage Startup Weekend. And some great information will pull up on that. Upstart Alpha, that is, I co-lead that program at the University of Alaska Center for Economic Development. We're actually launching our third cohort late in November, so right after Startup Week. And we're really excited about that, and we're going to send out some more information in that email that I mentioned. So, and then the Startup Digest, which I mentioned, lots and lots of great resources. For those who are interested, connect with the people who are here today. If you've got a great idea and you want to talk to somebody and think through it a little bit more, there's a lot of great people here to chat with and continue on the journey for that. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment, and I have one more mentee that I wanted to bring up. So we just were curious, what were 3 different ideas or challenges that you found really interesting? I apologize. I'm going to exit out of this for just a moment here. That's open right now. And apologize. I'm going to pull this up here. It's the same code. You go to menti.com. And we were just curious, what were 3 things that really piqued your interest that you found super fascinating or interesting? There was, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of really cool stuff happening in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and share this live. So again, you go to menti.com. You type in the code 33074425. Often if you pulled it up on your smartphone, iPad, computer, device, it should auto forward. And go ahead and add some things in there. What were 3 things, challenges, ideas, maybe potential solutions that were suggested today that you found really interesting or exciting? We're just curious. It's always fun to hear what people, what really resonated with a lot of us attending today. So we're just going to take a few minutes. Again, you go to menti.com, and it's the same code that we used earlier when we were introducing ourselves.
Well, excellent, Margot. And we have actually quite a few people left with us. I think everybody's looking forward to the breakouts and talking to our presenters. I know that I want to geek out on biochar for a minute. So if you look at your screen towards the bottom on the right-hand side, there's going to be a little 4 squares and there's breakout rooms. If you click on the breakout rooms, you can choose the different topics that you would like to go to. Once you choose that topic and you go into that room, if you would like to go visit another room, you can actually exit. You'll come back into this main area with Kai. And Kai is kind of our wayfinder here if you get lost, but you can go ahead and travel into different rooms and visit. So if you get into a room and there's only one person or there's nobody there, go ahead and visit another room and try it again later. I would look forward to seeing you in these different spaces. Kai, do you have anything that you'd like to say before we jump through the portal into a different room?
No, we're good. Thank you so much for helping facilitate the meeting and everyone in what you've done here tonight. This basically kind of wraps up the main part of the meeting. The breakout is kind of our virtual. We're going to head out to the lobby and chat and connect with one another. I wish we had a beer or a glass of wine or juice to share with you with some cheese and crackers, but I'm so thankful for all of you spending the time with us tonight. That will have to be our dessert.
Wonderful. Well, while we transition, I just wanted to call your attention, Kai, that Lance Ahern has his hand up, and I will see you guys on the other side.
Hey, Lance,
Kai. Kai, just wanted to say it was a great event, and wanted to make sure all of these events that are being mentioned in the chat that we get those added to the calendar, because there's some really interesting stuff there. I want to make sure, you know, it's gathered together in one place that I'm looking all the time.
Yeah,
on your list. It's great.
Yeah, I'm going to pull the whole chat thing out and try and make sense of it and share it back out with everybody, so that it'll be part of the email that goes out to everybody, is all the resources in there, and hopefully I'll make sense of all of it, put it in the right order. Sometimes it's interleaved.
Kai, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Before we go, I have another meeting that started about 30 minutes ago. I need to go hop onto that meeting. But it won't let me have 2 Zooms open at the same time. If I exit, can I get back into the breakout room or no?